Okay. Bum, bum. While we're waiting for somebody to come in, let's review some PT footage. Pro Tour Tucky. Michael Fang is a certified beast. Pro Tour Baltimore. Where is the... Is it on Twitch? Where is the video? Oh, it's on Star City Games. Okay. Alright. Recent broadcast. Turn down the music.
Sort of do those big turns back back-to-back-to-back for our Azalea player.
Well, I've got good news for you, Brendan. I'm done talking about it. I'm ready to be about it. Let's go down to our feature match area where our players are ready to play our first quarterfinal matchup. On the left-hand side, you see Michael Fang representing all the Oldems around the world, trying to get Oldham one step closer.
Okay, first quarterfinals match. Michael is playing against Azalea. First thing that you really need to do from both sides is gonna have a game plan. So let's take the view perspective of Jake, since we know that Oldham is going to be favored in this matchup. If you're Azalea, what are the opportunities that you have to win the game? You know that the Oldham is probably going to be trying to fatigue you, and so I think there is some amount of inevitability that Oldham has when they're running like a Rampart Crown plus Earth React endgame into you, because you don't have a weapon. Even if you did have a weapon, there's a lot of heroes like 5, for example, has a weapon in Searing Ember Blade that does 3 damage and can do like an endgame loop of about 5 damage, but it's possible for Oldham to not burn any cards against that kind of a setup. So typically, as the deck that's playing into Oldham, you need to be able to kind of kill the Oldham before you get to that position. So like the first thing that you need to do when evaluating how you play a matchup is to decide which one of the two players essentially has inevitability. And if you don't have inevitability, then you need to like create a situation that can lead to you winning the game. Now, Azalea has a couple of tools that let her stack damage. There's obviously Rain Razors. So if you can get your Rain Razors to be worth like 6 damage, let's say off of Bolton shots, you can go like Bolton shot, I don't know, like play Codex. That's like worth something. I don't know if Jake is playing. I have to see it in his deck list. Let's pull up his deck list actually before we talk about it. I think Fab already has it. Jake Warburton. So Jake is playing. So Jake is not playing Barb Undertow. So Barb Undertow is like also another like way that you can go like plus. So I mean his setup is like pretty standard. A lot of the pumps that he has are like +3s, and so generally like it's so like Oldham has like a hard time dealing with heroes that can kind of like multiplicatively or not multiplicatively, but like heroes that like scale their hands. So like for example, I've talked about in a couple of pieces of content how, let's say if you're playing Fi, like your 5th card could be worth potentially like 6 or 7 damage. Typically when the Oldham is playing defense, all of their cards are worth 3, so every time you can make a card worth more than 3 damage, it's like a big plus for you. Now if you're playing cards like Lace with Frailty, Read the Glide Path, Seek and Destroy, it's like Lace with Inertia, it's hard to get these cards to be worth more than 3 damage. And so you have to kind of like creatively make board states where this is the case. And one way that you can do that is by creating a situation where the Oldham has to end up playing like without an arsenal. And so you're going to have to expend cards to kind of tax their arsenal. So one of the best ways that you can really do that is you set up a situation where you like dominate an arrow, and then you have a like Lace with Inertia or like a Seek and Destroy attached to it. Now, Michael isn't playing Peace of Mind, so he doesn't have a good way to kind of counteract these triggers. But we do know that Michael is playing like 7 copies of Staunch Response, so you're probably going to have to try to pair something like Release the Tension with one of these effects, and then try to push on the turn that Michael has only access to 4 cards. So we'll kind of see if that plays out in this way.
Closer to the Living Legend status, and on the right-hand side, it is Jake the Baker Warburton trying to get Azalea her first ever Living Legend points. Of course, Azalea finding some tournament success, but not quite cracking through on that Living Legend leaderboard. Man, what a high stakes.
So kind of unfortunate for Jake. Michael starts off with the Channel Lake Frigid. One of the things that you kind of have to do, I think, as the aggressive player is like when Oldhim taxes you in a situation like this, it can feel like pretty uncomfortable playing against a hero like Oldhim that is going to, where the games are going to end up in fatigue. Like, you really can't be wasting your cards playing like inefficiently. So you have to like ask yourself, is it possible to tax my opponent's arsenal through this Channel Lake Frigid? And probably the answer is no. Like, Michael is going to get like a free attack essentially, so you kind of have to just hope that his attack ends up being something like a blue Thunderquake or something. It's like a tough situation to be in. And so Jake is choosing to play Read the Glide Path. It's a hard spot. I don't necessarily agree with this, but I can understand being like caught in a tough situation. I believe the players do have access to deck lists, so Jake is gonna know that Michael has access to like 3 Endless Winter, 3 Spinals, and a Choke Slam. Like, for example, this Drill Shot is not hitting, right? There's no way that you can really force it through. He's attacking for 7, like pretty easy for Michael to just block 2 or 3 cards. I think that one of the ways that you do have to kind of to win this matchup is by trying to dominate a Drill Shot with a couple of pump spells to kind of negate out this Rampart. And so I believe Michael is probably just going to end up blocking like 2 or 3 cards. There's even an argument, let's say if you do have, I'm not sure if I saw he has access to an Earth React. You don't really have to be afraid of Rain Razors. So this is like a downside of playing into the channel, is that you can't really represent Rain Razors with 1 card in your hand. And so I feel like Jake is spending 2 cards essentially this turn to trade for 2 of Michael's cards, but this is a trade that the Oldhim like really wants to make. Yeah, so Michael has the 2 card block. I believe that he's setting up for a knock. Knock in Arsenal is not like the greatest. I think usually when you're playing Azalea, you want to have a like a pump spell in your arsenal, just like something that you can just like play out of the arsenal so that you can then use Death Dealer and try to get a dominate. Setting up the knock means that you can't like really what's it called? You can't, if you knock, you can't activate your Death Dealer, really, because if you put an arrow on top, you're going to end up drawing into it. Yeah, so he just lets the knock go. What, like, I think that the matchup for Azalea is like really tough, and even if you do have like a really good game plan, I'm not exactly sure if it's winning for Azalea into Oldhim, but usually you can let the Oldhim get like plus value on some of their attacks, because you know that a large part of their deck is going to be defense reaction, so it's like really tough for them to kind of string together aggressive turns back to back, and they're going to have to give up tempo back to you just due to the consistency of their deck. So you have to approach the matchup, I think, a little bit differently than playing like an aggro mirror where like both decks are tuned to just kind of be presenting strong turns back to back. And I wonder if there's like an Azalea list from the calling that was playing Sand Great Bow with New Horizon. I wonder if that setup might be a little bit better into Oldhim, because if the Sand Great Bow hits the arrow off of the ability from the top of the deck, it's essentially the same power as a Dreadbore, but having access to New Horizon kind of lets you set up like larger hands, and potentially you can play like 6v4 6 cards versus 4 card situations into Oldhim. I have to kind of take a look at some of the gameplay for that Azalea, but they didn't record any of the matches, so for the calling. So like normally this is like a pretty good attack, but 14 is actually like fairly easy for Oldhim to cover through, especially at this stage of the game where the Oldhim has access to like all their armor. If like the average block value of cards in the Oldhim deck is around like 2.7, 2.8, so your 4 cards blocks around like about like 11 and a half. But then you can also like convert your arsenal card at least to 2 block, so it's like blocking like 11 and a half plus 2. Like maybe you have to use Iron Rock legs in this situation. If you have defense reactions in your deck, the average block value actually goes up a little bit. And like the Azalea is basically committing like 4 cards. Like one thing that I think as aggro players who maybe like get a little bit frustrated playing into Oldhim, one of the things that's like a little bit counterintuitive that you end up having to do, that you don't really have to do against anyone else, is kind of give up the value per hand kind of like way of thinking, and you more have to like set up macro plays, because essentially like Jake had let Michael destroy his arsenal, so he's playing a 4-card hand into Michael right now. So it's like 4-card 14 with a hit trigger, which is, I mean, like, it's not bad, but if you just keep throwing 4-card hands at the Oldhim, like the Oldhim is pretty content to block. Like if you look at he's playing a 4-card hand, but he's also expending 4 cards from his deck. So I mean, like if the Oldhim blocks at all with Crown Rampart, this is like a winning situation for the Oldhim. Like you're going to run out of, you play like, I don't know, like 12 blues, 9 blues in your deck. So usually like the blues don't really count towards, or don't count much towards like total actual damage in your deck. You have about like, if you fat deck like 60 cards ish to play with. And if you're just trading away like your cards at equal value, plus you get some turns which are like a little bit below rate, doesn't really matter that you're attacking for 14, you're spending 4 cards here. So I think the Oldhim is going to end up winning out in this situation. So there's a staunch response for sure coming here. And so basically, like if you look at that exchange, like the Oldhim is spending 3 cards, like because like you know that you have access to the deck list, like you know that they have these staunches. There's some argument to, like, if you wanted to gear your deck a little bit more towards playing against Oldhim, that you actually shift the total balance in your deck a little bit more towards attacks. And part of the reason for that is because you can your card, like the card value of an attack in your deck is worth like, I don't know, like between 4 to like 6 points of damage. So if you're just throwing the attack out, like if you throw like a line strike for 7, the Oldhim is gonna have to dedicate like 1 or 2 cards. If it's a defense reaction, they're gonna, like if it's a staunch, whatever, they'll staunch it. That's 1 card. But most of the time, you're like trading up on cards, and so you need to have like some way to like filter through your deck to like be able to set up like the bigger turns. So if Azalea players want to kind of play this matchup, or they think that they're gonna have to try to like make some adjustments to their deck in order to play this matchup a little bit better, in order to like be able to set up hands, I think that most likely you're going to have to lean towards playing cards like, I don't know, like Command and Conquer, maybe like Cadaver's Contraband, just like things that are worth even like, I don't know, like woundable. It sounds kind of stupid, but you need ways to like have more damage per card to, while also being able to kind of like pitch through your deck and find the cards that matter. Like realistically, the only turns that really matter, at least in the early game, are when you set up like released attention. Actually, I think that some Azalea players were playing for this event, not only released attention, but also increased attention. So increased attention is like kind of minus. It's like 1 card, you pay 1, and you only get 3 damage. But I mean, like the plus side is that if the Oldhim has defense reactions in their hand or their arsenal, if you can like put together these 2 cards, you get to blank cards from the Oldhim's hand, and then that lets you actually able to get the hit triggers that like matter, because Azalea, like at the heart of it, is a deck where its main source of power is by hitting their attacks, and is part of the reason why this matchup is so bad. And so like, I mean, like we can keep watching. I don't think that there's like much else to this, like the Oldhim player kind of has to work for this, but at the same time, I don't think you're actually really doing much. Yeah, just like trading even on cards. Pretty sure like most of the game is just gonna end up going like this. So actually, like this turn, for example, is one of the... I'm not entirely sure. I think for sequencing, because you know that the... like, because Jake has flipped, and he knows the top of his deck, like for sequencing, you should Azalea here. Like after the premeditate, you should Azalea so that you don't break the chain. If you Azalea after the Rabble, you're gonna give Michael, like Michael's not gonna mess this up. Like he's going to block Rampart onto your go again attack, so he gets like a reset for his Rampart. We'll see. Does he do anything? Yeah, now he Azaleas. He resets the Rampart. He's just giving like Michael essentially like an extra 2 block because would it depend on the second card on top? I mean he already flipped up the cards to the Spire Sniping, so I mean like that's true, but I like either way you're giving the Oldham player like 2 block, right? It kind of does. You can also I believe he flipped it up for Skullbone Cross Wrap. And I mean like one of the plays that you can do is like you can like have the Spire Sniping, put the blue on top, you put the blue on the bottom via the Cross Wrap, and then you get like a random card on top of your deck for the Rabble. But it's like much higher percentage that it ends up being red just due to like your deck composition. And it's like there's like a couple of like micro decisions that you can make that will influence. Like I don't think, for example, the way that the game is currently playing out, that it's going to make a difference in the eventual outcome. But this is so the way that the Spire Sniping works. So Spire Sniping triggers when you either flip it up face up or you put it into your arsenal face up. So when the Cross Wrap flips it face up as part of the cost, then the Spire Sniping will trigger first. So you're gonna look at the top 2, and then if one of those cards is blue, then you put the blue on top. Then the Cross Wrap is going to resolve. You opt to the top card and you put it on the bottom. And so like premeditate plus a go again attack is going to be like one of your stronger turns into Oldham. And so these are like kind of the key turns. Was Death Dealer used to trigger it? Oh, maybe. Oh yeah, Death Dealer was used to trigger it. I mean, yeah, like either way, I think it's like a good habit to get into. I actually think that throwing the even if you had a blue on top, throwing the Rabble for 5 plus then a Dominate Arrow is probably going to end up being better for you than throwing the Rabble for 7 into Oldham. Because if you throw the Rabble for 7, it's actually quite easy to cover up. Like it sounds strange, but like usually like 5 or like 1 under or like 2 over a breakpoint is a little bit more difficult to block on the Oldham side than like 1 over. Just because of the setup that Michael has with the Crown of Seeds and the Rampart. Like you really don't want to give the Oldham like a free 2 block. Yeah, so like all of these like cards, like him playing like the Release the Tension, etc. It can all be played. Now, like you can make an argument saying that if you play Release the Tension before you play the Rabble, then Michael's gonna know that he has to play the defense reaction onto the Ravenous Rabble, and like okay, sure, that makes sense. But I think that if this is your game plan, then I'm not sure that I would play the premeditate onto the rabble. Like even though you miss out on the opportunity to trigger it for 4, it's less likely that like the ultim doesn't, like if you're gonna give your arrow dominate, like the ultim doesn't really have to give anything up in order to block the 4, if that makes sense. It only, like the ultim only has to give something up if your arrow like wasn't coming in for dominate, right? Like then the cards that they're using to block the rabble is cards that they're not going to be using to block the arrow, so then the ultim has to like make a decision. But if you're gonna end up dominating the arrow anyways, like the ultim is only gonna have access to one of the cards in their hand to block the arrow, so it's kind of like a free block for the ultim onto the ravenous rabble. This way, like there's like a couple of ways that you could play it, but either you hide the fact that you are going to pump the dominate, or I think you just like avoid breaking the chain and then you just go for like more damage. And so actually, like the way that this is like sequenced, he gets to block more damage onto the dominate because his shield gets to block for 2 instead of blocking for 1 that it would have before. I don't know. It's like small things. I do like the play of that, like this eventually does set up where he is bottoming in razors, and then you get to basically like set up Bolton shots later on. And so like from the Olden perspective, like Jake has done 12 damage already to Michael, but Michael hasn't used any armor. And I think Jake has already played like 2 melting points. There's only so many like really big turns that your deck can do while you're churning through your pumps. And so like how many pumps you have really is like the big indicator of whether or not you can like beat the Oldham. One thing that I think that you could do, so when we're playing Lexi, like one of the reasons why Lexi is actually quite good into Oldham is because Lexi can set up like these bigger turns like fairly easily using Voltaire, whereas Azalea kind of has to play the pumps. But also like a card that Lexi has access to that's really good against Oldham's trying to fatigue her is Codex of Inertia, and you can play Codex of Inertia in Azalea as well. It's like a little bit weaker because it's like a little bit harder to kind of like dump your whole hand. But I could see, for example, if you were playing the Sandscour Great Bow like version of the list, it's actually quite good to have like like a medium turn, even if you end up like discarding a card to the codex to be able to set up like a 6v4 situation, that's really like where you're going to be able to like get damage through, instead of playing this like 4v4 5v5 type of situation. Yeah, and like the most awkward part about playing like Azalea into, so like another thing that like makes Azalea like a little bit worse is Sandscar Great Bow in action. Yeah, it's an action. So like one of the other awkward parts about playing Azalea into Oldhim, and part of the reason why Rampart is so good against Azalea, is that Azalea doesn't really have a way to around breaking the chain, because a lot of the plays that you set up that have go again involve kind of resetting your arsenal via actions, whereas Lexi gets to do it via instant. So it's just like something to be cognizant of. It's like one of your primary goals towards the beginning of the game should be to try to, yeah, like part of the reason is like you have the extra arsenal slot. I think part of it is also having like the flexibility to play cards like Codex of Inertia. Oh, hey Michael. Or watching you beat Jake. But yeah, like I think having New Horizons just like kind of frees you up. So like if any of you guys were around when Chain was kind of like the predominant deck, a big part of playing Chain against Oldhim was finding creative ways to avoid breaking the chain so that the Oldhim doesn't get extra value on Rampart of the Ram's Head. Because if you ever give Oldhim, like normally using a blue to pitch for Crown of Seeds plus Rampart is supposed to be like the Oldhim is trading basically trading like card efficiency for in exchange for not like having to use cards from their deck, in addition to like being able to block extra on stuff like Dominate or being able to cover breakpoints. If you break the chain once against an Oldhim and then they get to tick up their Rampart to 2, then their blue converts to 4 block. And then you're basically just like throwing, like unless your turn is just like so over the top, like you're basically kind of throwing away like any kind of advantage that you're getting from forcing the Oldhim to use Crown of Seeds in Rampart. Like really the way to like punish Oldhim for like Oldhims who like to Crown of Seeds and Rampart every turn is to like consistently string together turns that are above rate to kind of punish them and make them take trip damage if they want to use Crown of Seeds and Rampart. But if you do reset the Rampart, you're actually making them go like above rate on blocks. And so we see that here, like Jake plays the Codex, resets the chain. Michael is going to get to be able to get like a free 2 block off of his 1 floating here. And there's like basically no way that this drill shot is going to hit. Like Michael can even crown. Like Michael can crown here, and even if he doesn't draw like a 3 block, even if he had a 2 block, he can then use his Tunic to cover up like the last point. But the plus like let's see what these are like the situations that are really good for you though, because you get like as the Azalea player you get a 5v4 when the Oldhim doesn't have an arsenal. But there's just like what I was saying before about like playing Codex of Inertia into Oldhim. Like you need to find like more card efficient ways to get the Oldhim to not be on 5 cards on block, because if you have to like consistently like burn through all of your power cards in order to clear like the Oldhim out of arsenal, like you just don't have enough cards, like relevant cards in your deck to actually like win the game. Naked and afraid. And here's like also like a pretty awkward part, like even if Michael doesn't want to spend a card to pitch for Rampart of the Ram's Head, like he's gonna have access to Tunic here. So from like the Oldhim player's perspective, like you know that you are probably going to want to block Rampart here, even if you are okay with letting the Rabble hit. It's like so plus for you to just like block with the Rampart here, because your Tunic counter is going to convert to at least 2 block if the Azalea only breaks the chain once. Yeah, like see, like Michael immediately just like blocks the shield. The chain's gonna get broken, and like all of these plays are like kind of telegraphed, so it's like really difficult to get around that. And so this is coming in for what, 7, 12? So quite good, coming in for 12. With the Blood Rot hit trigger. But yeah, unfortunately, it gets covered up by 1 armor. And this is like, I don't know. It's kind of like an issue with the matchup in general. I don't think we have to like watch much more of this, but I think from like a deck building perspective, one of the things that if you do want to continue playing Azalea in this meta is that you have to find a way to kind of like break this core play pattern, because this is like a play pattern that's going to basically be like 70 to 80% of your turns. And if you're consistently resetting the Oldhim's Rampart and giving the Oldhim like extra value on block, there's like no way that you can like consistently beat them. And part of the trick to beating Oldhim, and this is I think one of the issues with playing against Oldhim, especially for players that are like newer. Not saying that Jake is like a newer player, he's obviously like did really well at the Pro Tour, but like one of the difficulties of playing against Oldhim is that you need to have kind of like a complete game plan from start to finish. You just like can't waste any cards into the Oldhim. You can't like take these turns that you're like churning through like all the power cards in your deck, and you don't get like enough compensation to kind of show for it. So I think if I was playing Azalea, like one of the first things, if I wanted to kind of address the Oldhim matchup and I wanted to tune Azalea for like RTNs or anything like that, is finding ways to consistently make plays with your deck that don't reset your opponent's Rampart. The answer might be that there isn't really a good way to do that. In which case, if Oldhims are really prevalent in your local meta, then maybe Azalea is not the best choice, and if you want to play Ranger, then you should play Lexi. But if you could find a way, for example, to have consistent plays in your deck that don't involve breaking the chain, then really that's like I think where you're gonna see more success. And like I think a lot of that has to do with like preloading everything. I have to I guess like play some games with the Sanskara Greatbow list, but like if you can like, let's say like put an aim counter on your arrow, have like 2 arrows set up, for example, have like a Bolton shot with like the rain razors like already like loaded, or like you play Rabble and then you already have like your arrow set up, you already like have your dominate, then you get to like, I guess like play the game a little bit more fairly against the Oldhim. So let's go to, yeah, we talked about that. So basically he loaded his Spire sniping and he wouldn't know that the Rabble was red, but my argument was that the main power of your turn is like the dominated arrow, and throwing like a Rabble for like 2 or whatever is just as annoying to block, right? Like especially if let's say if he gets a random card and then he throws the Rabble for 2, if you end up blocking like a 3 block on it, then it's as if the Rabble was doing 3 damage. And since he's going to be like, he doesn't even necessarily have to like play the Rabble in that situation. Like maybe he could save the Rabble for the next turn. He can like he's going to need to dominate, like the dominated arrow is going to be like his main source of damage for that turn. And so that's my like main criticism. Like if you're going to load, like if you know that you're going to load your Spire sniping to try to get like a dominated arrow, then I think that you should try to commit to that first before like deciding to play the Rabble. And I think that like the value of playing a premeditate and a Rabble for 4 like doesn't outweigh, or like a Rabble for, even if it was the Rabble for 7, like doesn't outweigh the thing. Actually, was the Rabble from his arsenal, or did he? Yeah, so he plays the Rabble for 4 after loading the Spire sniping. Like I think it's actually quite reasonable in this situation to just like save the Rabble for the next turn even. And you kind of like lose out on value from the pre-med. It's like, I think it's like a tough situation either way, but like essentially like the Rabble for 4 I don't think does any damage to you, right? Like he wasn't going to be able to block with the card anyways, because he's like you weren't going to be able to block with the card that you blocked on the Rabble anyways, because he's dominating the arrow. I was saying that if the arrow wasn't going to be dominated, then the play makes a little bit more sense, because he's trying to like force the hit trigger through. But because the arrow is going to be dominated, like the Rabble doesn't actually contribute anything other than burning a card out of your hand. And yeah, I think that's the main difficulty of playing against Oldhim, is that you just end up in like a lot of these like weird situations where you like, because the Oldhim like equipment suite is set up to have such good inevitability, like you really need to make sure that you're like maximizing the use of all of your cards like throughout the entirety of the game. And even if you like mess up, like it doesn't take like that many turns. Like I think at the Pro Tour I had like I had one game where I played against Matt Rogers where I really just like messed up on one turn and I didn't maximize the use of my rain razors, and that's like the difference between fatiguing or not fatiguing. And so you just like you need to like be in the mindset of like wanting to maximize like all your pumps. Like if I'm going to be using my pumps, I need to like be using my pumps on like a dominated arrow or something. Like I need to be able to like convert these cards into damage, because if I'm just like converting these cards to like trade for the Oldhim's cards, then the Oldhim is going to win, because if I'm not doing damage, then they're going to have like a better endgame state than me. And so I don't think we need to watch a lot more I think yeah, Jake does end up killing Michael's Rampart at some point in the game, but like that, the game plan of kind of forcing your drill shot through, I think either that has to be your primary game plan. Yeah, sure, we can do Brody's game against Mara. Like I think either you find a way around Rampart, or you make putting a -1 counter on your Rampart like your primary game plan. Matt Folks actually submitted a Google form, but he said just look at the Pro Tour games. But let's watch. Let's look at the deck lists first. I've heard so many different opinions on the Brody. Okay, yeah. So let's take a look at how how it was played. First thing is you have to kind of look at their deck list to kind of decide like how the players are going to be playing this game, and then I'll take it from there. So Mara has access to probably I wonder if she's gonna play Arcanite Skullcap for this match. If she ends up playing Skullcap, then I would assume that her game plan is to mostly keep up pressure with cards like Command and Conquer, and like Snowball with some kind of dragon setup. Command and Conquer and Miraging Metamorph are really cards that Skullcap is for Lexi. Metamorph and Command and Conquer are really like the only cards in the deck, and Snatch, that go like really plus for the Dromai. Other than playing these dragons out, on the like her setup is like pretty aggressive, so I think maybe she's trying to set up like an early dragon board that hopefully the Lexi player can't really deal with. The other thing, how many poppers does Brody have? Brody has access to 2 Command and Conquers, 3 Battering Bolts. Art of Wars are potentially poppers. So I guess like from the Lexi side, usually you want to try to find like your Endless Arrow early and like hold on to it as like a way to consistently get value if against the Dromai player if they do play dragons. Ashwings end up being very difficult to clear, and then so hopefully you can generate enough value, generate enough aggression so that the Dromai player can't dedicate cards to playing dragons. Essentially, like the Dromai player's biggest strength is in this matchup is being able to exchange life towards the early game and for like a board state. And so if you get to do like enough damage to the Dromai, then you get to like shut off that avenue so they can't like reset up the board afterwards. So indeed playing Skullcap. So one of the things that Brody has to, I guess, like be aware of is that when the Dromai is submitting like Skullcap Furnace, that it's going to be more difficult to force through like the 4 damage breakpoints. And so maybe like 5 damage is going to be kind of where you want to be. So at the beginning, she uses Seekers to generate an Ash. This is like some tech that I was hearing it for the first time. It's like a way for you to like not have to play Mage Master Boots. She makes the Ash ring off the bat. Quite interesting. She chooses to play an Ashwing instead of playing the Themai. Although I guess like, what is like the difference? The difference is if she played Themai, she wouldn't have an arsenal, but on the plus side, she would have 4 health. But it's like fairly easy for Lexi to like hit. And then she also pitches her Breaking Point. So Breaking Point is, I think, one of the tech cards that Mara has against Lexi. I wonder what her arsenal is. Forgot the opt to. Oh yes. I mean, like, we're not here to criticize technical plays. I think we're taking a more like macro focused approach. I think he has the popper, right? He has a CNC in his hand. Or did I misread? Oh no, it's a red arrow. I actually find it quite interesting. He chose to load the Frostlock instead of the 0-cost arrow. Usually I like having 0-cost arrows in my arsenal. Because like, I don't think you ever really want to end on the Frostlock and it costs 1. Maybe Brody's thinking like he doesn't want to have all the Frostlocks in his hand, but I think if you load, like, you know that you're going to have to block, so maybe it would have been better to load the... I think it was a Searing Shot. Yeah, so the turn ends up being Remorseless into... Yeah, so for example, like what he could have done on this turn instead is he could have went like Remorseless, go again, pitch Frostlock, Bolton +1, and then throw the 4, and then arsenal the card. So he's like losing out on a card here. Usually like losing a card is like pretty big deal at the highest levels. Does have a popper in his hand. This is like an ideal setup for Dromai. Here's like where you really want to have access to Endless Arrow, if possible. And the Mirror Guy gets popped. Ooh, that's interesting that she chooses to attack with Mirror Guy before attacking with Snatch. I think you... What? Oh, she wants to play out her... I think since she gets the action point, it's probably better to attack with Snatch. It's like very unprofitable for Lexi to really block Snatch out. And if you draw like a red, you can pay for the Themai anyways. I think if the Lexi blocks 2 cards there, you're like pretty fine just like passing. You could swing Mirror Guy, but I think it's probably not worth if the Lexi blocks 2 cards. Yeah, she doesn't want Themai stuck in Arsenal for sure. What was the... So her first sequence... Yeah, so like her first sequence, she chooses to like she doesn't want to pitch like double theme eyes, so she wants to play. I just wonder if theme eye is even like a good card in this matchup. Like, do you have to submit theme eye? Like, can you submit 60 cards without playing theme eye? Because yeah, it is like pretty bad. Like it doesn't have the right breakpoints. You want to have like 5 health, I think, or you want to have or you either want to have 5 health or you want to have like, I don't know, like more than 3 damage. So let's see if you're playing into Lexi, like what do you play? You play the D-Reacts. Play this. I prefer taking the 2 blocks out. I mean, that makes sense. Sigil, I don't really have like much of an opinion on. I do think Blaze is quite bad in this matchup. I don't know, like she's playing Snatch. I think having like Rabble is actually like pretty decent. Like usually like the 1 card go agains like in aggro matchups is, yeah, like you could take Flame Call and Phoenix Flame out. I don't know, it's tough. I think like the argument is that like Flame Call Awakening is quite bad when you are when you're defending, but it is quite good to be able to set up like Breaking Point or like CNC. I'm not sure. That's like a tough, like I personally hate playing cards in my deck whose like sole purpose is to block, especially like when you're, I mean, like unless you're playing like Oldhim, obviously like you play cards that only block, but if you're playing like any kind of deck that has like an aggressive game plan, like playing cards that just block, it seems kind of rough. I also think that if that is your game plan, then on the first turn I probably wouldn't have arsenaled the theme eye, and it's actually potentially would have, instead of playing the Skittering Sands, you could have just like played the theme eye out. So you activate Seekers and you activate Flamescale Furnace, you just play the theme eye. Did it come out of Arsenal? Yeah, it came out of Arsenal. So her first hand in the game is Skittering, Breaking Point, and 2 theme eyes, I think. And then so she chooses to Arsenal the theme eye. I think either Breaking Point or Skittering Sands is probably going to be a better arsenal. And so one of the things that you could have done is you could have activated Seekers, pitched a card to Flamescale Furnace, just play the theme eye, and then arsenal either the Breaking Point or the Skittering Sands. I don't know. So many of these like decisions, like literally like the very first decision of the game can't Furnace just off the Seekers. Oh, why not? You pitch. Oh, true. Okay, so she hasn't played anything. What is the best play then? So yeah, I think I would have just arsenaled the Breaking Point in that instance. Then you can like do the same play. You go Skittering, Furnace, or even like if you have the theme eye there, I think you just play it. I think you just play it and pass, and then you just keep your arsenal open, right? Like you lose out on a card, but you end up with like essentially 7 or 8 health at the beginning. You don't get you end up with like no Ash. I guess that's tough. I'm not sure. There's a like it's probably better to have Ash, because then your like follow-ups end up being a lot better. But yeah, I probably would have just arsenaled the breaking point in that instance. I think having the theme eye. Yeah, I think you just like you just attack with snatch there. Yeah, no, I think not ending at 0 Ash is fair considering the composition of your deck. I think that makes total sense. But then I think that arsenaling the theme eye is just kind of rough. Because like breaking point has to be like one of your best cards. So Brody chooses to kill the. What is Brody's turn? So he blocked 2 cards. He blocked a Bolton shot and a battering bolt. Okay. I'm not 100% sure I would have blocked the Bolton shot to save 3 health. Right? Am I crazy? Is that what happened? At the beginning. Yeah. That's fair. I also think that given Brody blocked a Bolton shot on the Chromai, it's like even more incentive to just like throw the snatch out. Lexi can't really play off of 2-card hands that well, unless his arsenal is exactly like 3 of a kind. And even if it was, it's like kind of a gamble. Like he like the Lexi player is incentivized to have arrows to throw to clear the board. So yeah, Brody chose to like block with a Bolton shot, so he doesn't even have an arsenal set up for like the next turn. So she bottoms a card so that she can activate Furnace. This line is also, I think, kind of tough. I think there is also some argument here for picking +2 on the E-Strike and then arsenaling the Kyloria. I think just throwing the Kyloria out there. So like, for example, if the Lexi player had drawn into Endless Arrow here, it's like very awkward because the Lexi is about to go on Tunic on 3. So one of their plays, they can just like block the Kyloria with 2 cards, Endless Arrow the Kyloria, and then potentially Brave Forge Bracers it, and have like a 6-card setup into you at the cost of the Brave Forge Bracers. Alternatively, if the Lexi just keeps like a I don't know, like a 2-card hand with like a 0-cost arrow, they can just like kill the Kyloria and set up a 5-card hand back at the Dromai. The Dromai doesn't have any Ash. Yeah, I think it's tough. Like you basically convert the you basically end up you waste a resource, but you exchange the resource for 2 damage and an Ash. And the life totals are still pretty high right now. I think I would maybe go for like the higher value play. This just like plays out your hand. Brody actually lets her draw a card. Let's see what his response is. I remember he has a Codex in his hand. I don't know. This play is also kind of weird. Like, surely if you have Codex, you just block 2 cards. You can activate Voltaire and then play Codex and clear the Kyloria. And then you give the Dromai back. You give the Dromai back what? Like an E-Strike? I don't think that's a big deal. What is that? Is that an affecting shot? So his hand was... He's choosing to go Remorseless Go again. Into a Heat Seeker. Plays the Codex. For the searing shot. What does this play do? This play... You get to... Basically both players are like accelerating towards the end of the game. So his hand was all 1-cost arrows. But he could have also like he could have set up a situation where he has like Heat Seeker and like a random arsenal and he has snaps up still. I don't know. That's also like a tough situation. Against like the Dromai's 3-card hand. Like the best thing that Dromai can really do in that situation is CNC you. With no Ash. I'm not sure. Yeah, like she's still playing Ravels. I guess she just took out the Flame Call Awakening. Which I think is kind of reasonable. I don't know. Is it reasonable? I would have to be playing the Dromai Lexi matchup, and Mara definitely beat a lot of Lexis at the Pro Tour. So probably onto something. Yandere is definitely one of the tougher dragons to deal with. The other thing that you kind of have to consider as the Lexi player is you definitely don't want to just be like blocking the whole time, because there is a risk of fatiguing out to the Dromai if you spend like too many cards on their dragons. But in situations where the Dromai is low on Ash, I think that's like the best time to like really push. So he has Codex. I think it's Codex Endless Arrow. Mara took the damage. This is a hard situation to play. I think I might play call middle chain. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I don't wanna question Mara's like deck choice or like the cards that she chose to submit, because she definitely got a lot of success at playing at the tournament. I think we're just looking at like decisions and like in general like macro strategy. I think that definitely like the Arsenal choice or like the choice to not push after Brody blocked with after Brody chose to just like block the 3 damage with a card. Maybe she's thinking that the Lexi just like doesn't have a hand that like plays, but I mean if he's blocking with a Bolton, like the Bolton shot just like plays by itself, so it's like more inclined to just believe that was a misplay, because Brody Tunic was going to 3. This is like a weird spot to be in, because like you really don't want to be throwing out the Endless Arrow. Like you wanna have that to clear dragons. She took the Heat Seeker, which makes me think that her hand is probably set up that she wants to push, and so I wonder what his last card is. If it's like another arrow, I think you just throw the arrow and then you throw the CNC at her face. I think clearing the Yenderai here is kind of not really what I would want to be doing. Oh, she also has the Codex. Yeah, I'd probably throw CNC at face here. I might even throw I might have thrown Endless potentially, because there is some upside to throwing Endless here, because if Mara does let it hit, then you get to just like pitch the Bolton shot and then Arsenal the Endless. If the Endless goes to graveyard, then you can save the Codex to play the Endless again on the following turn. Oh, but like as it is, I probably would just now pitch the Codex to CNC at the Dromai to attack the Arsenal. Yeah. I think this is like a pretty big misplay. I think giving up Endless is pretty bad, because he hasn't drawn Rain Razors yet, and he still has access to Snaps and Bracers. And the Dromai player is going to get to attack you again with the Yenderai, but the Dromai is also on no Ash. So I think if you keep pressuring the Dromai's hand, like, so he's used one Battering Bolt on block, so he still has access to, I guess, like 3 poppers left in his deck. Like it's pretty high chance that he's going to draw a popper like one of these 2 turns. So I think like you just kind of have to play for drawing into a popper or potentially clearing the Yandere out by when you draw Rain Razors. So you have about like 6 live draws that help you deal with the board for like much higher value than attacking the CNC onto the Yandere. I think when you attack the CNC onto the Yandere, then you're basically giving up like I don't think there's an endless in the graveyard. He was checking earlier, but yeah, and this is also like a kind of awkward situation because of the Heat Seeker. Now he has double Codex potentially. He's probably not going to Arsenal the Codex. Yeah, so like if he had attacked Mara with the CNC in that position, then Mara's only 3 blocks would leave her with a rake in her hand that she can't really do anything with. I think there's very low chance that she's going to block the furnace onto the CNC because she's on no ash and you kind of need the furnace to like generate ash. So I think like the most likely scenarios is either you get to CNC plus clear her arsenal, or you're gonna like, or she would have ended up like passing her turn. Droma's like 1-card hands are actually quite weak, and her 2-card hands are also pretty weak with no ash on the field. So I think that's also like a misevaluation of the situation on Brody's part, given the fact that Mara had already blocked a card plus the skull cap on the Bolton shot. I think the block on the Bolton shot was already like a little bit weird. I think if he had thrown the endless arrow in that spot, then it would have maybe like forced her to block that way. Like you kind of want the Dromai to block on your second arrow there. So knowing that you have access to a codex, like maybe you would want to just like throw the endless arrow at the Dromai in that position to kind of induce the Dromai to block with Skullcap and a card, and then you get to throw the CNC. I don't know. That whole turn played out a little bit weird. And also like the way that she's been playing makes me feel that her Arsenal card is probably like a defense reaction, or see, it's probably a defense reaction, or it's like a Chromai, like polarized between those things. So the Arsenal is almost certainly like a dragon at this point. I think I think I would have probably attacked with Heat Seeker instead of with the Remorseless. I'm not sure, like Remorseless in general is not like super strong into Dromai just because of how many like how much of their damage is just like attacking with her dragons. Like Mara's gonna get like 2 attacks on her Ashwings without like costing herself life. So she plays like maybe 2 actions this turn. I think the Heat Seeker represents more damage because it's a full card, and maybe like could get the block out. Yeah, Arsenal's a Chromai. I remember this this position. I actually was kind of sure that Brody had won in this position. And I was like watching the game in person, and I remember when I saw he flipped over at Rain Razors in his Arsenal, I just like walked away from the stage at this point. I was actually quite surprised to hear that he lost the game. So let's think. If he throws 3 arrows here, he's threatening how much damage? He's threatening let's say one of them was blue. What is it? 6, 8, 14. Like he's threatening about like 20 damage, and then the Droma has access to about like 12 blocks, so it's gonna go to like single digits. Droma gets to attack back with for 7. I'm not sure if you get to play all reds, then it's even better. And he told me after the fact, I think he just clears dragons here. I think clearing dragons on the Rain Razors is like 100% wrong. Because like he would have probably been able to play like a 5-card hand after this. So it was a blue Searing Shot, it looks like. And then he does an Arsenal. I'm very confused why he chose not to Arsenal his last card. Could have been like another blue, so his hand was like 3 blues. I think the real killer for this game so far that I've noticed has been there's been two instances where Brody has had the option to arsenal a card and he's chosen not to, so he's gone like -2 cards on the situation. One time was when he had the when he ended up with double codexes and he just didn't want to like have 2 codexes in his arsenal. And the other time is this on this last turn where he presumably doesn't want to arsenal like a blue arrow. But I think it's like really hard to win the game if you are minusing yourself on these cards. I think in the double codex situation, because he has snaps up, like he should be able to arsenal the endless arrow, and he can kind of like throw it for free. And then I think even holding poppers is kind of bad. It depends. Like, I think good Dromai players can find ways to play around the fact that you have a popper, especially if you telegraph it. It's just really hard to win at the highest level when you minus yourself on cards. It's like sometimes like the margins for winning is like maybe like 2 points of damage. And so like if you're giving up like two cards, not even like 2 points of damage, it's like really difficult, I think, to get wins. So pretty lucky he has the popper in that situation. Maybe that's why he like didn't want to. Can we see what he drew off of the 3 of a kind? It blocks with Arctic. This block with the Arctic, I also don't like to like save yourself 2 health. I think even especially like if you're going to be playing 3 of a kind, I think like the 2 health, like the 1 resource might like matter more. If it's like the difference between being able to play a card or not. Having Arctic set like post like 3 of a kind is also quite strong, because then you can let's say like flip up the Arctic and then give the Dromai player 4 frostbites, so they like essentially can't do anything on their next turn, so you get like a free setup turn afterwards. I don't know, there's a lot of decisions. I just want to see like what cards he drew. So he has the Searing Shot, the Rain. Let's play this at slow-mo. He has Searing Shot. He draws Drill, Searing, Battering Bolt. Drill, Searing, Battering Bolt costs 4 resources. Yeah, like if he had like for example, if he had kept the Arctic, then he could have played his whole hand out, and then that would have been how much damage? So it would have been 10 plus 8 plus Searing Shot is 6. So he could have done 24 damage. Threatening 25. And I think you just like take it. Like you just take the 25 damage in that scenario. I don't know. That's pretty much my takeaway. I think in general, there's a lot of optimizations that can be made here on deciding like. I think the hardest part of playing the matchup for Lexi into Dromai is like knowing exactly like when you're supposed to be like pushing and when you're supposed to be clearing the board. On a turn like this, I remember him saying that he was like worried that her last card was something like Ravenous Rabble in her arsenal, so that if you push if he pushes her hand, then she can go like Rabble plus like stuff. But I don't know, it's really tough because like how much damage is that? It's 4 5 6 7 8 9 13 damage. It's like 13 damage. He couldn't have played the battering bolt. He would have been at 10, and then he just has to block like one card from his hand. 24. I don't know. It's pretty tough. Yeah. I think you probably Arsenal the battering bolt. I mean, he ends up time walking her, kind of like the battering bolt ends up trading for 4 cards. So like having it in your hand is not too bad. Like specifically in this scenario. I think in general there was just like a lot of decisions made in this game that like caused kind of awkward situations to be played out. And yeah, like this is super strong. The other thing that like you have to be worried about, I think especially when you have access to deck lists, is that like you can't really be holding cards in your arsenal like this for like multiple turns, because you're just giving your opponent like an out. Like the turn that he chose to kill the Chromai, he could have went like full face and then just like cashed in the Rain Razors for like an extra 4 damage. Like even if the game plays out like the same way, I don't know. It's like a tough situation. Like here like the endless arrow like attacking for 4 like basically doesn't do anything. I think like the best thing that you could do in this situation is like commit snaps, and then you can like snap, like hit a dragon, and then clear the 2 dragons, and then just like hope her like 4 card hand like doesn't play that well. But so she would have 2 Ash Wings left. I don't know. It's tough either way. Like the actual worst feeling is when you end the game and you didn't get an opportunity to use your equipments, because having like you have to find a way to like to extract value out of these equipments while they're relevant. And so I think you can be like a little bit more aggressive with how you choose to arsenal. I think like choosing to arsenal the endless arrow with the codex is fine. You like throw away your endless arrow at the beginning of the turn, maybe like the Dromai player blocks, but you always have access to the codex on the follow-up, so you can like codex back the endless arrow if you need to, you know, like hit a dragon. Yeah, and I mean, like, this situation is just untenable at this point. There's too many Ash Wings. You're gonna lose to the Ash Wings. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's pretty much it. If I was to like kind of sum up like this whole game, it's just like the decisions on like when to like attack the dragons. Like this Yenderai probably could have stayed around for like an extra turn. And this remorseless, one of the remorseless at the end should have been a heat seeker, I think, to try to potentially get like an extra card instead of and then the other instances is just like losing 2 cards, like not arsenaling. So like probably lose out on maybe and not throwing CNC at face, instead throwing CNC at the Yenderai. I think that those are like the 3 key moments is just like choosing to attack targets and then not arsenaling. That I think are like the main things that I would comment for this game. I don't know, it's tough. Close game regardless. Matchup feels pretty different between. Yeah, so like you have to recognize that Mara's build is like a little bit more aggressive. So because she's playing cards like Breaking Point and Snatch, and like I think like the way that she has her cost curve set up throughout like a lot of the game, like when you see that the Dromai player has a little bit more like Ash, a bit more issues having enough Ash than the turns where the Dromai player doesn't have Ash, it's like pretty difficult for them to go extremely plus, because for the most part they're just going to be playing like 1 for 3 go agains into like something else. Or they're going to be playing like E-Strike go again, you know, pitch a card for 1. That's not really what you ever want to be doing. Ideally, like your most efficient turns with Dromai is you have an Ash already, so you can like pitch 1 card, play a 1-cost dragon, pitch another card for Furnace, play like a 2-cost something. Those are like your best turns. And I think like situation recognition of the turns where Mara doesn't have access to Ash is when I would really want to be pressuring the Dromai's hand. So, because like one of the ways that you get out of not having Ash is by having access to your full hand, right? Because like you're going to be going a little bit minus on the turns. If you get your hand pressured on the turns where you don't have Ash, it's like really difficult to like find the space to come back. Yeah, so that's kind of what I would say regarding that. This is a matchup that I think we played a lot during testing, and I think like we found that like the best things to do is to leverage Endless Arrow against like the more redline build. You really want to try to leverage like Arctic Incarceration. That's why I guess had a bit of an issue seeing how like the Rain Razor's turn played out. Like I think choosing to block Arctic on the Pyloria for 2 damage is just like seems kind of like a strange play to make. Like at the very least, maybe you should keep the 2 block to block like a Breaking Point or something. Yeah. And it only like blocked 2 damage. Like I think she got to draw a card anyways. So yeah, just being a little bit more cognizant. I think we shouldn't discount the fact that playing these tournaments is like very demanding on your like mental and physical stamina. So it's possible to like everybody makes mistakes. Very easy to kind of sit in our chairs and make criticisms, but Yeah, those are the points. If I was Brody and I was like watching the tape again, I think I'm not sure if he, like, I know that Brody's the type of player to have considered all these plays, but maybe he's not like evaluating for whatever reason properly in those situations. And so I would probably just like go back and you have to kind of create these kind of like mental checkpoints for yourself. So you check off like what are the conditions for like when you choose to do, like when do you choose to go face, when do you choose to like play more defensive. And I think that it makes more sense to me when the Dromai doesn't have Ash, that you want to play more aggressive, and when the Dromai does have Ash, then you kind of need to be more careful of their like really big plays, because you have like the opportunity to do so. And so, you know, that really only comes with testing and getting a feel for like what you're supposed to do in each situation. So I think that's going to be all the games that we cover on this stream. Really looking forward to having people send in their own VODs. Obviously, like for this stream, we are kind of looking at players play at basically like the highest level. But I think that no matter like what level you're playing at, there are things that you can try to work on. And like the most important thing is to find like one or two things from each game, like a takeaway for maybe like a common mistake that you make, or something that you do frequently that leads you into kind of tough situations, and just like specifically working on that one thing. Like for example, in the Azalea versus Oldham match, it's just like having a complete game plan when you're playing into Oldham, knowing that they're going to be trying to fatigue you. There's like some turns, and then also like during deck building. So it's like two things, right? One is deck building for the matchup, and then one is having like a complete game plan, knowing like when do you want to use all your cards, like when not to just like kind of like waste cards. And then I would say that for this, if I was like critiquing like playing Legacy into Dromai, I think you really have to know when it is that you have to go face and when it is you have to attack dragons, and just like making mental notes of that, so that when you do have to play in tournament, it's like easier for you to make the correct decision. And so I hope that you guys enjoyed this stream. We're going to be doing it again on Monday. Same time, I think it'll be 10 a.m. You can type coaching. You can fill out a form. Most important thing is to record your own gameplay and to just, you know, like put it on YouTube or something, so that not only me, but like you have access to those videos so you can review on your own as well. And I hope you guys found this useful. See you guys on the next stream. Thank you so much for watching.